The first time I watched Gilmore Girls season 5, episode 21, titled Blame Booze and Melville, and Mitchum Unsberger gave Rory what I thought at the time was a scathing review of her internship performance with his paper, I thought he was an absolute jackass, even worse than his father and wife, because at least those two didn't bother pretending with Rory. She, and by extension, we, the audience, knew where we stood with them, i.e., they didn't like Rory and expected her to fit into a certain role should her relationship with Logan continue. Mitchum, however, seemed decent. He listened to Rory, gave her an opportunity to show what she's capable of, how much she wants to pursue a career as a serious journalist, and when she was riding that high, he cruelly yanked the rug from beneath her feet. At that time, I thought he was absolutely vile and clearly wanted to sabotage Rory so that he could, by extension, use that to further his aim to control Logan. As an adult who's had a job for over a decade now, or at least had one for over a decade, currently unemployed for personal health reasons, but as someone who had a job and worked in advertising for over a decade, who almost took a detour into broadcasting, I have since come to the realization that Mitchum Hunsberger might be an absolute cad of a father, but in the assessment he gave Rory, he was unfortunately telling her the truth. Rory Gilmore does indeed lack what it takes to be a journalist. She lacks teeth. When I say that Rory Gilmore lacks teeth with regards to her desire to pursue journalism, I'm looking at it from two angles. The first is that she lacks the ferocity, the absolute desire and ruthlessness to pursue a story to its end, sinking her teeth in and unwilling to let go until she gets to the very bottom of what it is that she's reporting on, which, side note, that is something that Paris excels at, by the way, and yes, I am a Paris Geller girly. Sue me. The second is that Rory Gilmore is coddled, and with the coddling she's been given, it means that she's not desperate, not hungry enough for the work. Because you need that to be willing and able to do whatever it takes to sink your teeth into a story. And I'm sorry to say, but Rory doesn't have that. Now, I know that there are people who are currently watching this video and are convinced that you don't need to be a shark to be a journalist, that you can be kind and sweet and helpful. And I would agree to a point. If Rory's interest had been maybe lifestyle or her making social commentary on the things happening around her, then yes, I could possibly see where she might at some point find success in that. I mean, we do get instances in the show where her writing was praised, especially when it was more leaning towards social commentary. For example, the piece she did on the school pavements, which Paris really liked and which apparently did well enough, although we, as the audience, never got the chance to actually read it. I'm still miffed at that, by the way. There's so many little notes and Rory's articles that the show never gave us the chance to read. I wish there was a site we could go to where the crew uploaded this thing as a sort of behind the scenes memento for us fans, but I digress. Back to Rory. As I was saying, if her writing was more focused on social commentary, I could say that maybe Rory would be able to survive and even thrive in her job without teeth. But her interest is more aligned to political pieces. Her desire since she was a child was to be Christiane Amanpour, a journalist who is well known as a war correspondent who sits right in the midst of death and devastation, unflinching, as she delivers on the reports that she believes the world needs to hear. Christiane Amanpour, who effortlessly interviews world leaders without blinking an eye or getting intimidated into dropping a line of questioning. It takes balls, massive ones, to be a war correspondent. Does that in any way sound like Rory Gilmore to you? The girl who still doesn't have the cojones to look Mitchum Hunsberger in the eye by the time he dropped that line on her in season 5. Like, don't think of the Rory who goes back to Yale after the year she took off and is a bit more assertive and confident the next time she sees Mitchum, I agree. But think of season 5 Rory, who had her head down and was clearly visibly nervous at meeting and working for Mitchum. That Rory who couldn't separate the man who was her boyfriend's father from the man who is her boss and who she needed to impress in order to show how desperately she wanted this job. She wanted the affirmation it gives. And I know you can easily say that, well, the deck was stacked against Rory since the very beginning. No matter if she had done well and shown that she was more than capable, Mitchum would still have found something to complain about anyway because he didn't like her. And maybe you're right. Maybe that would have been the case. However, that isn't what happened. What happened is what we got. And even outside of the fact that she couldn't find a backbone when interacting with Mitchum at work, there's still the fact that after Doyle berated her piece on the ballet performance she had written previously, she followed it up by writing a scathing review about the ballerina who was in the play. A review that Doyle, our editor at the time, actually really liked and ran with, but which the ballerina was infuriated by, and when she complained and expressed her displeasure, Rory wanted to retract it. Now, I'm not saying that Rory should not have wanted to do so if she could, of course, but for the type of journalism that she expressed an interest in back when she was much younger and kept repeating throughout the show, retracting unpleasant pieces because the subject of your writing was hurt by the words you said does not a journalist with teeth make. That is not what someone who is a shark would do. Rory Gilmore as a character is someone who is driven by the desire to be liked by others. She doesn't admit it, of course, because the show places her in this quirky place where she gets to be a bit of an odd duck with a close relationship with a mother that others don't get, but which means that she often is someone who is content with herself and is quite happy with some alone time and a good book to read. Plus Dean or Jess and later Logan, depending on who she's dating at the time. The show would have you think that this is proof that Rory doesn't need to be liked, and yet the lengths to which she would go to often explain herself, to clarify so that the other person doesn't misunderstand and hate her, says otherwise. Case in point, when Paris, due to Tristan's instigation, is under the mistaken belief that Rory likes Tristan, a situation that is only resolved after Rory shows up to the Chilton dance with Dean as her date, for example. Rory might not pursue being liked by an entire school, but for those for whom their opinion matters to her, it is something that she keeps pushing for and desperately wants. And part of the people for whom their opinions matter are the subjects of the pieces she's writing. And as someone who was interested in reporting on politics, that just doesn't cut it. But Naria, you might say, she only wanted to be Christiane Amanpour in the early seasons back when she was just a kid. She grew out of that, and honestly, I would have agreed with you if the show hadn't ended with, at least before Gilmore Girls A Year in the Life, if the show hadn't ended with her packing up her bags to join the Obama campaign trail when he was campaigning for his first term. Like, I don't know how to say it, but joining then Senator Barack Obama as his reporter on his campaign trail, that is as political as you get. Assertiveness, being able to stand your ground, being willing to pull teeth if possible in order to get the information you require to do your job well, is all part and parcel of what it means to be a good journalist. Same thing with putting your ears to the ground and being prepared to jump on the opportunity or stories as they arrive. These are unfortunately qualities and traits that Mitchum Usberger doesn't see in Rory in the episode, hence why he makes that claim, which blew out of proportion, which also ties to the second thing mentioned about why I think Rory doesn't have any teeth. She's been too coddled. And I know that might seem shocking to hear, considering that Lorelai raised her while she was a single mother, and they clearly didn't grow up in the type of affluence lifestyle accorded to the Gilmores, and you would be correct in that regard. However, when I say coddled, I do mean the fact that everyone in her life, from her mother to Luke to her grandparents to her father to her boyfriends, would all rise to her defense should someone say something disparaging that hurts Rory. All of this serves to coddle her in different ways. For example, after the conversation with Mitchum, when Lorelai, Emily, and Richard learn the truth, they immediately rise as warriors to protect Rory. Richard even tears Mitchum a new one for being mean to his granddaughter. And yet, in rewatching that scene, I find myself wondering if that was truly the case. Watching Lorelai, Emily, and Richard immediately rush to soothe Rory's feelings of rejection whilst castigating Mitchum, and never once having Rory address what could have led Mitchum to say that, and if there's anything she needs to learn from that statement in order to do her job, baffles me. This overinflated belief in Rory not being able to do anything wrong and being able to achieve whatever she sets her mind to, whilst a feel-good sentiment that I enjoy getting in movies and shows, it doesn't change the fact that Rory should be aiming for more and exhibiting those traits if she actually wants to make it in journalism and have a career in the field. She needs to really want this, hunger for it in a way that she will go to any length, within reason, of course, in order to get it. I know I keep bringing her up, but Paris Geller is a great comparison to how this can be done, by the way. But back to what I was saying, Rory doesn't show us well enough just how badly and how desperate she is for her big break. And no, I'm not saying that she should have taken the Sandy Says job offer. Clearly, deciding on what you want, aligning on it, and making the call on what you can accept and what you are turning down is something that everyone should do. Sandy Says isn't the right fit for her, and she knew that, and that was fine. But that entire sequence also let us realize that Rory moves in the world of journalism, this thing she considers her life's calling, with privileges inherent in the fact that no matter what happens, she's still a Gilmore. Emily and Richard have her covered. Christopher has her covered. Lorelai, who now owns her own inn, has her covered as well. And Logan is always there just in case. All of this means that, she gets to relax a bit. Now, I'm not saying that she actively puts these connections to use or that she gets lazy or reliant on them. What I'm saying is that they are a safety net that is accorded to her, which, like most people who do have something like that to lean on, makes her a bit laid back and soft. Some would even say toothless in her approach. Do I think Rory is an amazing writer? Most definitely. Reading all those books most certainly would have come in handy, and she's quick and witty in her interactions, especially when she's playing off of Lorelai. So we can infer that she would be amazing as a writer. But being an amazing writer is different from being a journalist, specifically a reporter. And I think that distinction is something that the show doesn't really explore with regards Rory. It seems to conflict that, and maybe that is why I, like Mitchum, am judging her a tad bit harshly. If Rory's goal and dream is to be a freelance writer or columnist, then the state that she was in season 5 serves her just okay. She can coast, be selective with what she needs to do. She would be working primarily on her own, so there wouldn't be instances or situations where she would have a boss like Mitchum ask for quick pitches and suggestions to be given, if any, and be judged for not speaking up or being proactive in that response. If what she was going for was a freelance writer and columnist, then I would say she's fine, good, even. Unfortunately, Rory Gilmore, as she tells us from the very first time she drops her dream back in season 1, has always wanted to be a journalist. The type of hard-hitting reporter who is in the thick of things and garners respect, recognition, and palpable change, the way that Christiane Amanpour does. And the Rory that we see in the show as she navigates her place in the world, that Rory to me just doesn't have the teeth required to pull it off. But that's just me, of course. Yapping with my opinion as always. Please let me know if you agree or disagree with me. Was Mitchum Ellsberger right? Like, sure, his delivery sure could have used some work, but did he have a point in his confrontation with Rory? And did anyone else get pissed at the way that her family reacted to him giving that feedback? Because I was. Like, sure, they're coming from a place of love and all, but I remember watching the scene and just thinking to myself, there you go, coddling her again. But anyway, would love to hear your thoughts, of course. Please drop them in the comments. Like this video if you've watched this far and haven't done so yet. Share this if you want. Support me on Patreon if you can. And until tomorrow's video, do remember, obsessing over the things you love, perfectly valid coping mechanism.